We want to bring in now former Secretary of State and former National Security Advisor and former Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, retired four-star General Colin Powell. And General Powell, thank you so much. Thank you so much for coming on this morning. In light of what President Trump incited yesterday, Twitter and Facebook took action to secure their platforms. The president has access to the nuclear codes. What can be done, what should be done to secure our democracy for the next 13 days?
Well, let me say first, I'm pleased to be with you this morning as you cover this terrible issue. I've never seen anything or experienced anything like this in my many years of public service. Yesterday was a national disgrace, but we'll come through it. We know how to come through things like this. It reminds me a little bit of the riot we had in '92 when we had a riot because of the effect of the Rodney King thing. We were called in, and I was the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, and President Bush called me and said, send in the troops. And we did, and we brought it to a conclusion. In this case, though, I do not know what the plan was. I cannot tell how many people were going to be there in police uniforms, why we didn't have more National Guardsmen on standby. Maybe they weren't there right away, but why weren't they on standby? And so I think the plan was not good, and I hope that this will be examined very, very closely. But once again, we see President Trump doing things that are absolutely outrageous, criminal, claiming that he is going to be the president of the United States when he knows he isn't. But most shocking of it all was that we had to deal with this, and you had a Congress that was not dealing with it. And so every time I think about President Trump, I also think about the Congress that did not do its job. It did not do its job. It just went along with him. And there you have 12, 14 senators who are right with him. That's not what we should have done. We should have had a Congress that realized the problems that existed and did something about it. They'd done it before on a number of occasions. They did not do it on this occasion. And we should have seen what was happening early on. As I watched it on television, I could say to myself, wait a minute, where are the cops? Where are the policemen? How are they in reserve? Who's in reserve? How far away are they? And it took hours for them to respond because they had to go into the building first and take care of that problem. So I think it was a disgraceful performance by our leaders, a disgraceful performance by our military and our police officials and those who are responsible for those individuals. But we've got to make sure that we're on top of this. But this scares me that it was our Congress that for the last 4 years has put up with this. I'll never forget my first time as a public official when this administration came into being. And Donald Trump went after Mr. Obama by saying he was born somewhere else. Well, he wasn't born anywhere else. But he sent off, Mr. Trump sent off investigators who were not investigating anything. He was using it as a tool against public opinion. And that's the way he is. And we've watched this now for 4 years. And here it is 4 years later. He has lost the election. It has been demonstrated 3 times by testing that he has lost the election. And he is not going to be the president again. And nobody would accept it. President Obama is gone, of course, but President Trump would not accept that. And that was a disgrace. And why didn't more people speak out against it and say no and keep something like this from happening? As a soldier in my old days, I don't remember quite the layout of troops that we had. Where were the backup troops? Who was in reserve? Where was the Guard? Where are the active duty troops? That's doable. And it wasn't done, hasn't been done well. And so I hope that when President Biden comes in, he will address this problem. And I have great experience with the president, and I'm sure that he has what it takes to be on top of a situation like this. I've known him for many years. I've worked with him, and I'm quite sure that he will be doing a good job.
Mr. Secretary, you 4 years ago warned Americans that Donald Trump was a national disgrace. You said he would be an international pariah. All of that has proven to be true. We had every living Secretary of Defense at the behest of Dick Cheney write a letter, sign a letter warning about what he could do in the remaining days. What are your biggest specific concerns? What should government leaders, what should members of the House and the Senate be concerned about over the next 12, 13 days that Donald Trump could do to further undermine American democracy?
You must not be allowed to do anything like this. We have to make sure that the military knows its job and that the Congress is being protected and the Congress is being protected. But we have to make sure that Congress is ready to step in. If he ever tries anything like this, he shouldn't be able to get away with it. We have a system, and Congress is part of that system, and they've got to do something and not just stand there and watch it go by.
General Powell, it's Willie Geist. So let's be specific about what you mean. Congress stepping in, the military being ready. What should they be ready for? What do you see as possible in these final 2 weeks?
I'd be surprised if we had anything like yesterday, but we have to be alert to that possibly happening. So we should have a reserve of forces, National Guard, active Army, Marines, whatever we need, whatever the military thinks might be appropriate to have standing by. So that something like this does break out, within minutes, we have troops on the way, and they are carrying weapons. You know, some of the people who were in this startup yesterday were not even carrying weapons. Carry weapons.